For my project, I did the opioid epidemic. Here is a map of the United States showing all different sorts of pills with the title Opioids in the center, emphasizing the opioid epidemic. Next, we have the opioid epidemic picture, which shows anything from pill overdose to painkillers to addicts. So this is showing that it can lead to multiple different things. It can cause mental health issues. So this is like a great picture that embodies all the different parts of the opioid epidemic. Next, what is an opioid? Opioids are a class of drug that include illegal drug, heroin, synthetic opioids such as fentanyl, and pain relievers. This can be anything from Oxycontin, hydrocodone, Vicodin, codeine, morphine, and many others. As you can see in the bottom are two pictures of different pills and what they can look like and the shapes and forms that they can come in. Continuing on, you're looking at the opioid epidemic and when did it begin. Heroin was super big in the 1960s, but then when Purdue came out with Oxycontin in the 1990s, this is where it kind of switched places, and heroin started to decrease and Oxycontin and prescription drugs started to increase. So here's two different charts, and you can see the data and how heroin still increased, but also the prescription drugs was the main thing that was which was steadily increasing. Continuing on, during my research, I had the current event, why are so many white men dying? And for my research article, I had the white opioids, the pharmaceutical race, and the war on drugs that wasn't. For why so many white men dying, like I said before, Purdue came out with Oxycontin in the 1990s, which is the start of the epidemic. They came out with this drug during this current event article, and they said that it was a non-invasive, it was a less addictive drug, when it turned out to be more addictive and more health harming than helpful. And then for the white opioids research study, they were looking at the different races in the opioid world and comparing the demographics of the two different types of consumers and users. Continuing on, we're looking at the statistics. It's comparing heroin with methadone and other synthetic opioids to any opioid. And you can see from 2000 to 2016, any opioid went from about 300,000 to about 1,400,000 different users and consumers during the United States during that time period, which clearly shows a spike in users, consumers, dealers, pharmaceutical reps increasing, doctor prescriptions increasing, so everything is increasing. Looking at the next image, the opioid epidemic by the numbers. So this is coming from the CDC. In 2016, there were 116 people died every single day from the opioid related drug overdose, and around 11.5 million people or misusing prescription opioids. So, that obviously draws attention. Like, why are these people misusing? Who's writing the prescriptions? How are they getting it? And then also it draws, a super big attention to my eyes is 948,000 people were using heroin. So it's like, how did we go from using prescriptions to heroin again? I thought heroin was kind of in the 1960s like we saw before. So what was the sudden change? Like, how did this change? And then, just all these statistics and numbers are crazy, and the fact that we're using so much money in the pharmaceutical world. Continuing on, we're looking at some more statistics and images. Like I said before, more than 11 million people were abusing prescription opioids, which obviously raises the question, how are they getting them? And, why are certain races and demographics being targeted, which I will cover in the next few slides. And then also another fact from the CDC was from 1999 to 2016, the amount of opioids nearly quadrupled, which clearly shows, how much it was changing and how much, the numbers were increasing. And, then you obviously look about how many users and you look to see how many people are overdosing, how many people need rehab. So then this is another fact from the CDC from about years 2002 to 2015, the number of overdoses related to opioids is the statistic and the fact in the bottom corner. So here's where the biggest chunk of research came in. So from my research, I started to investigate and research different things like, who is the consumer, who's getting the prescriptions, why are certain demographics, being targeted, and, there are stereotypes and different facts. So during my research, I was trying to, discover some of this stuff. So the stereotypes are Black people are more likely to get addicted and sell prescriptions. So in return, doctors are less lenient when they are writing prescriptions. They're a little bit more strict. So that is why the Black African American population is not becoming addicted, and they have a lesser numbers that are going in rehab because of opioid overdoses and addiction to opioids. So the fact that doctors were more lenient with white people, and that is what's causing the huge white population increase with the drugs, is crazy to think about, because just because doctors are a little bit racist or stereotyped is basically the main reason. That is for the certain demographics that are being targeted. Next, looking at the statistics on demographics with opioids, you can see that the white population has the highest rate of overdoses, overdose accidents, overdose deaths, overdoses by white men versus the Black population, the Hispanic population, and most of the time they are men are the greater population, or the greater ratio to women. It's usually either like 4-to-1 or 5-to-1, with men being the leading ratio with the demographics, as well as white being the predominant source here. Continuing on with my research, I also found that most addictions came post-op from a surgery or some sort of operation, or even a hospital stay. After a diagnosis, doctors were able to write a prescription to help ease the pain, but in return they ended up with an addiction after the doctor was writing them prescription after prescription. This was a huge thing that I found during all my research. Also, according to the CDC, around 40% of all opioid issues start with a prescription. Opioids, gateway to other drugs, ? While I was growing up, everyone said marijuana was the gateway to other drugs, but now it seems that opioids are the gateway to other drugs, such as heroin. In 1990s, after they realized that Oxycontin was extremely addictive, they began to ban it, which then now everyone was already addicted at this point, so everyone had to find a way to get their fix. So they resorted to heroin because, as you can see in this picture, heroin and prescription opioids have the same side effects. As you can see, heroin and prescription opioids, they both have the sleepiness, the coma, the nausea, the pain relief, and the breathing problems. So that is why a lot of people went from the prescription opioids such as Oxycontin to then being heroin users. Continuing on, looking at opioids versus heroin, you can see that about 115 Americans die every day from an opioid overdose, which also includes heroin. You can also see that heroin is a part of a larger substance abuse problem. So if you drink alcohol, you're two times more likely to be addicted to heroin, marijuana 3 times, cocaine 15, and prescription opioids 40 times more likely to be addicted to opioids. Finishing up with my research, I was looking at really who is responsible for the opioid epidemic. First and foremost, obviously you have to blame the user or the consumer, but second, you're going to be looking at the doctors and the pharmaceutical companies, who's writing the prescription, why are they writing the prescription, how much are they prescribing their user and their consumer. There's multiple different people that play a part in this epidemic, so we need to take responsibility for who's a part of which demographic, or which population that is being targeted. And finally, we're looking at the discussion question. I said, what do you think you should do as a consumer to prevent yourself from becoming addicted? How should our government and the medical field be monitoring the opioid issue that we have here in the United States? And lastly, if you worked in healthcare like I'm about to, how would you personally try to make a difference and attempt to help reduce the amount of users? So I think these are some great questions that you could put a lot of thought into, or just some, random thoughts that you may have about the topic of opioids. So I look forward to hearing your guys' responses. And lastly, here are my sources. Thanks for watching.